Folks, he's done it again. LeBron James, the old Akron skullcracker, the pocket pass prince, has won an NBA title. It's a happening akin to Meryl Streep being nominated for an Oscar, or J.K. Rowling saying something stupid. We've come to expect it. This foray marks LeBron's 10th trip to the final round and his 4th win. That's 4 with Miami, 5 with Cleveland, a couple of those were 10 years apart, and his first with the Los Angeles Lakers. 17 years is a long time. That's nearly long enough to have Anthony Kiedis write a creepy song about you. It's also long enough to pile up a massive cast of teammates, and LeBron has gone through them. Being a subject in the court of the king remains one of the surest ways to win in basketball. But what's it like to play with LeBron, and who has done it the best? Some things are just proven to be true over and over again. Babies cry. If you put your hand near a wild horse's mouth, you'll get bitten. Give LeBron James about any collection of NBA players and he will probably take them to the playoffs. This has been going on for an exceptionally long time. In 17 seasons, LeBron's teams have only dipped below 40 wins on 2 occasions. His rookie season, in which he instantly bolstered Cleveland's win total by 18 more wins than the year before, and his first season with the Lakers when he suffered a groin injury that derailed the season. LeBron has had all-star and all-NBA caliber teammates in the past decade, and we'll get to those guys in a bit. He's also had some pretty high-quality role players that deserve their due. Guys like Ray Allen, of course. Shane Battier was brilliant. Tristan Thompson for stretches. Mike Miller. Mo Williams. And Big Z, Zydrunas Ilgauskas. He's made all of those players better, and those types have really helped him get to the top of the mountain, but you could argue that his greatness is just as visible when he has far less to work with. Some of LeBron's early Cleveland rosters were like those penny stockbrokers from Wolf of Wall Street.
How'd you fucking do that?
This is a guy who took Sasha Pavlovich, Daniel Boobie Gibson, and Anderson Varejao to an NBA Finals in a pair of 60-plus win seasons. In sports, we talk a lot about system players that get some kind of statistical boost from the scheme that they exist in. LeBron's presence doesn't create stars, but it does something similar in that he himself is a system. He is a context.
The way he understands the game, sees the game. It's all because of how smart he is. He is sort of the definition of a basketball genius.
His game management both ways and his playmaking genius simplify the game for everyone. That said, simplified doesn't necessarily mean easy.
People think it's easy playing with LeBron, and he's the greatest player in the world, but you have to understand, when you're playing with LeBron, people are going to force other guys to beat them. So you're going to be put in a situation as a role player or as a guy that's playing with LeBron where you're going to have to make and take big shots in order for your team to win.
Because of my deep affection for making up terminology, I've decided to call this rare two-way phenomenon Elevationism. On offense, this is largely because of his brilliant scoring and playmaking balance. It creates defined parameters in which players can function, and those parameters can create value where it might otherwise not exist. LeBron differs from most elite scorer-playmaker hybrids in that his usage is so flexible that you can't scheme to take one or two aspects of it away and expect that to be enough. There's a sort of micro and macro phenomenon occurring in the overview of his career. On the micro level, game to game or series to series, LeBron is so consistently dialed into what's being thrown at him, and his versatility helps him combat that. On the macro level, from phase to phase of his career, he's continued to broaden the application of his playmaking and scoring balance. It only took him a few months to figure out pick and roll at the NBA level. By 2006, he was elite in that area, and LeBron could have chosen to be stubborn after the disastrous 2011 finals, but he went into the lab and added a devastating post-up game. Every time he's added an elite scoring wrinkle, he's had the elite playmaking to punish anyone who tries to stop it.
And then he'll like be in a post up and he'll be like, Shump, if he move, cut right behind him if he move. And everything he's saying, you just watch it happen.
But what can you do when your opponent's primary offense can morph at full volume and efficiency to come from any schematic approach? One option is to text one of the 5 best players in the world and have them come join your already loaded team. Other than that, not much. Like most masters of their craft, playing with LeBron is demanding. It can call for some ego death. Players will likely find themselves creating less of their own offense than they have in the past, but it's not uncommon for LeBron teammates to post career marks in shooting efficiency. You are going to get the ball where you need it. LeBron also has a way of reviving the value in players like a basketball necromancer. He's like an elite film director that can do stunt casting in bizarre roles.
Got the gist.
Dwight Howard is a great example. Dwight had effectively fatigued the entire NBA, and here he is relishing a bit part on this Lakers team, showing more defensive activity than he has in years and posting the best true shooting percentage of his career.
Shake on it. That funny, Dwight.
There have been a ton of playmakers throughout the history of the game that have made things easier for their teammates. We have not, however, had a player that could so capably shoulder the decision-making on the offensive end and effectively monitor and stifle it on the defensive end. In the first phase of his career and into his prime, the amount of ground that LeBron could be aware of and physically cover was tremendous. We're talking about a generational basketball IQ in a 6'9", 250-pound frame with elite athleticism. The motor in the defensive area has been selective, I grant you that, but I think that you could make the case that LeBron is the most effective free safety defender that the NBA has ever seen. At physical peak, this covered a multitude of sins, but it also could be very disruptive. He could capably pressure ball handlers. He could not only tag rolling big guys, but body them and block their shot. He could shrink windows for what appeared to be available skip passes, and he could quickly close gaps at the perfect moment to clog up lanes. The speed of his reads have allowed the speed of his body to decrease. The 2019-20 season marks a low point for LeBron in the past 7 seasons in terms of defensive distance and speed. Still, there comes a point when great teams can overwhelm defensive weaknesses or sell out to stop something that is being leaned on too heavily. This calls for additional star power, and LeBron has maneuvered his way into playing with a few. During the Western Conference Finals, Reggie Miller and Chris Webber started debating the subject of LeBron's greatest teammate. Webber's answer had Twitter buzzing, myself included. Then I got thinking, best teammate, what does that even mean? I think that this is a multifaceted question, so solely for the sake of this video, I made up an asinine scoring system for LeBron's greatest teammates, and we're going to break it down into 4 categories. First, schematic and cultural fit. Did they stylistically mesh well as players on and off the court? Second is statistical output with LeBron, who had the best individual season with the King. Third, personal peak. This will tell us how good the player was at any one point, and in a way, give us an indicator as to how much they may have compromised. Last is success rate. How much hay did they make while the sun was up? Let's hop to it. Kevin Love was a franchise player with Minnesota, and post-play and rebounding were the old-school, skillful but physical, body and barrier style that propped up a lot of what comprised his identity as a player. His statistical peak in his career was the 2013-14 season when he averaged 26.1 points per game on 59.1 true shooting. He hit a box plus minus mark of 8.9 and a total rebound percentage of 18.7. Going in, the on-paper fit with LeBron was dicey. Not only would Love see his usage and the types of touches that he'd built his entire game around drop, but the on-court transformation called for a physical one as well. K-Love had the chance to punt on that entire experience, but he didn't, and I give him a lot of credit for accepting that challenge. Love's journey from burly boy on the block, inhaling pretty much anything he wanted off the glass and out of a glass, to svelte stretch shooter in the corner, starring in Banana Republic commercials and appearing in the ESPN Body Issue, is pretty remarkable. LeBron accelerated the timing of this process, but it's possible that Kevin Love might have evolved in this direction anyway. His skill set flashed signs of competent scoring and creation out to the perimeter, with some of the bruising sprinkled in. And look at Kevin Love's three-point attempt percentage each year. It steadily goes up. Love's best statistical season with LeBron was likely 2016-17 when Cleveland's offense was whipping ass. He scored on 43.2% of his spot-up possessions that season, and his shot mobility gradually increased during that time frame. He struggled with injuries in the playoffs throughout his time in Cleveland, but he helped LeBron to 4 straight NBA Finals, winning 1 and sharing a big old slobbery, ugly cry at the buzzer. Bosh's experience was a lot like Kevin Love's, minus the extent of the body transformation and the level of adversity in meshing with LeBron stylistically. Both players had to adjust their play styles the most, and both players took the brunt of the blame when things didn't click on all cylinders. Bosh is an extremely bright, highly thoughtful guy that could probably do just about anything he wanted in life. And his self-awareness, not something pro athletes always have, and eagerness to make this alliance work would pay dividends. Again, much like Kevin Love, Chris was blossoming into one of the best players in the NBA by 2009-10 in Toronto, his best statistical season. He'd proven that he could efficiently carry an offensive load, but at that time, a lot of that was happening in the post. 34% of Bosh's possessions were in the post that season, and by year 2 of playing with LeBron, that number was way down to 14%. Miami did what they had to do to keep their big three on the floor together, and Bosh compromised a lot to make that happen. Defensively, I think that he's ahead of Love and Irving, and I don't think that there's much disputing that. By year 3, the 2012-13 season, Bosh was fully settled into his adjusted role with LeBron. He averaged 16.6 points per game on 59.2% true shooting and a 22.7% usage rate. He was highly efficient in the half court on both ends. Chris was good for 1.052 points per possession on offense and allowed only 0.778 defensively. Bosh and LeBron went to the finals 4 consecutive times together, winning 2. Offensively, I don't think it's controversial at all to say that Uncle Drew is bar none the most talented live dribble creator, multifaceted scorer, and versatile finisher that LeBron has ever played with. That reality elevated their time together and simultaneously put an expiration date on it. Kyrie had built his own ramp to superstardom, and suddenly here comes LeBron to completely change the terms. Together, they were industrial flight and magic. Swift, skillful strength from one, and dazzling, dizzying dribble displays from the other. It benefited LeBron to let Kyrie burn hot as much as he could because his inhuman scoring sprees were a key element to what made Cleveland so good during those seasons. Irving's defensive impact was, no big shock here, a notch below everybody on this list, spare probably Kevin Love. If Irving climbs back to sustained full health, he might be able to build upon and top his output in 2016-17 next to LeBron and 2017-18 during his first truncated year in Boston. I'll be honest, I had Bosh ahead of Kyrie for a while during the making of this video, but what Kyrie provides at that level is just harder to come by. During his last season with LeBron, he carried a heavier scoring and playmaking load, averaging a 29.7 assist percentage and 25.2 points per game on 58% true shooting. Let's call a spade here. It's hard to praise the Heat teams out of one side of your mouth and then turn around and knock Golden State for adding Durant. But if the Warriors aren't all-time aberrational in 2017, the Irving, Love, James Big Three probably nabs another one. The sailing was frequently choppy, and Kyrie still seems to have a bizarre relationship with LeBron. But those Cavs teams were great when it mattered. I need the youngsters to lean in close for a moment and listen to what I'm about to tell them. If you haven't watched much basketball from before 2010, I need you to go back and watch Dwyane Wade in the mid-2000s, particularly in the 2008-2009 season when he was finally getting a break from brutal injuries and hitting his athletic apex. That year, Wade finished third in MVP voting, led the league in scoring, averaged 7.5 assists and 2.2 steals, posted a 30.4 PER and a 10.6 box plus minus score. There haven't been many fluidly explosive, merciless scores that were more frightening than Dwyane Wade during that time. The guy didn't earn the nickname Flash by wandering around in a trench coat in a city park. Wade haunted the dreams of every slow-footed big man in basketball. He had this gliding smoothness to his game, and if anything, as special as Wade was, his knock-around toughness robbed him of some of his prime-level productivity. The Wade-James romance has been fascinating to track. Started with Wade feeling slighted as a rookie because of the attention that Carmelo and LeBron got as the face of the class, but the seeds of hoop companionship were planted when the two players bonded during the 2004 Summer Olympics. Defensively, when these two got together, it was incredible. Wade and LeBron were unbelievably disruptive perimeter defenders, and Wade's presence allowed LeBron some freedom to roam and jam things up. He's also possibly the greatest shot-blocking guard the NBA's ever seen. In these two long-armed, hyper-athletic wings, you had a tandem that could fly around, switch 1 through 4 and sometimes 5, and really challenge the offensive cohesion of their opponents. Offensively, there was some overlap between what the two players did. Wade was a high-level, high-volume scorer that you could post, you could put in a pick and roll, and his fantastic middle game was physical, angular, and crafty. Still, Wade definitely compromised. LeBron was ascending to one of the highest individual peaks that we've ever seen, and Wade clearly recognized that and deferred. In the 2010-11 season, Miami was tops in the league in transition, isolation, and pick and roll offense. In 2012-13, it got even wilder. Miami was the most efficient team in the NBA in 5 of their top 7 modes of offense. I talked some about the injuries that plagued Dwyane Wade before he and LeBron got together, and that didn't stop. Meniscal issues in his knee dating back to Dwyane's time at Marquette would remain an issue for the rest of his career, and he was just unable to provide the same offensive lift or defensive impact that we'd come to expect from him. He hobbled his way to the finish line, but together, James and Wade went to 4 straight NBA Finals and, again, won 2. Anthony Davis, aka Lob Zombie, aka What Can Brow Do For You, aka Hanging with Mr. Ooper, has the most naturally synergistic on-court skills with LeBron of the entire group. Davis can pop or roll, and I think that he's the best vertical spacer and finisher ever to play basketball. Off ball, his first step is lethal. All it takes is one moment of failing to pay attention and he is towering over everyone for the finish. Through the first 3 rounds of the playoffs, Davis and James ran 16 pick and rolls together. They either scored or were fouled on 81.3% of those possessions. Davis and James only really overlap and cannibalize each other in the area of shots. And as we've said, playmaking and sharing are LeBron's strengths. LeBron can score, but he's at his most impactful when he's using the threat of his own offense to disassemble a defense with his passing. Davis both seamlessly coexists with LeBron's strengths and provides elite defensive impact on the other end. Of the best seasons with LeBron in this group, AD's 2019-20 season features the highest box plus minus, defensive box plus minus, true shooting percentage, free throw rate, block and steal percentage, and points per game. AD has had some highbrow seasons, particularly in 2014-15 and 2017-18, but because of his much improved pick and roll defense and shooting growth, it has to be this season with LA. I think that Davis's ceiling is higher than anyone on this list, and the frightening part is I don't think that he's there yet. He's an utterly dominant player that is still growing. This is title number 1 for AD and Bron. The rings and the finals appearances might not get the opportunity to pile as high, but consider this. AD is working with old man LeBron and hasn't enjoyed the benefits of a legitimate big 3, and they still look this dominant. Imagine if you swapped Davis for Bosh during those Miami years. Imagine if he was in Cleveland instead of Kevin Love. If you put prime Anthony Davis with prime LeBron James, outside of maybe early 2000s Shaq and Kobe, that would be one of the best tandems in the history of the sport. I think that he is LeBron James's greatest teammate, and I think that we have only just begun. People bristle at the fact that LeBron chose and manipulated his way into playing with each of his greatest teammates. And I don't think that's fair. Part of the problem for LeBron, at least early in his career, is that his unique talent had a way of working against him. The floor is instantly raised by him simply walking through the door because you're constantly overachieving, never drafting high, and you always seem to be lacking the assets to make a big move. That left King James with a tough choice. Stay put with a team that had failed to get him the kind of help that he needed, or take matters into his own hands. Sometimes I have to step back and reflect on just how crazy it is that LeBron James has been in our basketball lives in some form or fashion since 2001. As a freshman and a sophomore in high school, he seemed suspiciously ahead of his peers. And 19 years later, at age 35, here he is, finding ways to remind us that he's still the best basketball player in the world. And I'd say the most complete basketball player of all time. I admit there was a time when I, like a lot of people, was mad at LeBron for breaking this purist idea of hoops monogamy that I now find ridiculous. I've totally flipped to the other side. I think that LeBron is so special that he deserves great teammates. I just hope that he can keep going. Long live the king. Let me know if you agree.